Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Len Ward, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about the amazing things you're doing with Ward Consulting.
Okay, great.
Appreciate you being here, bud.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So where were you born?
I was born in South Jersey. I'm probably about 15 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Okay. Did you grow up there?
I did. I've been here my whole life. I spent a little bit of time in New York City for work, but outside of that, I've been in Jersey my whole life.
Are you still there?
I am still in South Jersey.
Oh, cool. So you've been there all this time.
Yes.
That's awesome, man. That's
Many
awesome.
people from Jersey, yeah, they don't leave. They say they leave, and then we leave, and we always come back. So
yeah, well, there's something about the Garden State, man. People just love it. Yeah. They absolutely love it, and they keep. You're right. They keep gravitating back to it. So
you know what it is? It's you're 15 minutes from Philly, you're 2 hours to the mountains, you're less than an hour to the beach, and you're 2 hours up to New York City. It's really quite a spot in America to be in.
You got it all, bud. You got it all.
Yeah,
so growing up there, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I guess what I just mentioned. I think going to the Jersey Shore and all that is one of the best things. I think having access to a lot of things, a lot of people don't realize how great Jersey is, from, farmland areas, great golf courses, things like that. Jersey's a very underrated state. So it's one of those things when people come, they're like, I didn't realize this was New Jersey. I'm like, yeah, it's not the Sopranos. It goes a little different than that. So
yeah, and there's a little bit different take on what people think of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because they just haven't lived where you've lived. They haven't enjoyed what you've enjoyed. So when you were in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
History.
Yeah. Why?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just always gravitated towards history. It's always been one of my favorite things. I always felt as if you really understood history, you could pretty much understand anything in the world, because once you understand history, you understand why mathematics, why certain types of English and things like that. So once you understood it, then it really made a lot of other things in school become a lot easier.
It was one of my favorites too. I know exactly how you feel. Did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
Favorite teacher? Trying to think. I'll be honest, not one that really sticks out. There's not really one.
That's okay.
Really, college different, but yeah, high school, no.
I got you. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Most influential person growing up? It's probably my father. Growing up, so I was fortunate enough to work for my father at what is the best golf course in the world, Pine Valley Golf Course. My father was the caddy master. I worked for my father for years. But he was probably the most influential person in my life to really help me get to where I'm at, because his backstory is actually amazing. Should be a movie. But he really kind of propelled me to get to where it was. And it wasn't really like all this wise wisdom. It was more like when you were doing something wrong, it was like, or doing something right. It was always the eyes looking at you, or just a subtle comment. So I would say he was probably the most influential person. That's
awesome. So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What was it about your dad's life that should have been a movie?
My father's life, and I probably shouldn't even put this out there. My father lost his family when he was 16 in a house fire, went off to Vietnam, fought in Vietnam, came back, owned and operated a bar with my mother. It didn't last too long. Ended up becoming working for EM Science, one of the very first computer programmers years ago. But then my father became caddy master at Pine Valley. So Pine Valley is a generational thing. A lot of families work there for years. If anybody who's knows golf, if I say Pine Valley, they know it right away. Mm-hmm. It's bar none the best course in the world. But it was the people he got to know. It was the friendships that he struck up. We tell people all the time, when I talk about the people my father knows, the people my father associates with, the people my father still texts at 82 years old, 81 years old, people would think I'm making the story up, and I'm not. And the people who know my father realize the people in power that he knows, it's really coming all the way from losing his entire family, fighting in Vietnam, all the way up to he could put a text in as some names I would shock you with, and these people get right back to him is stunning. And it is because of the golf course. So it's kind of like, I think God just kind of moved him over there for everything he had to deal with, youthful in life. His life really paid off. It truly is a movie if you really kind of look at it all the way out. It's amazing.
That's awesome, buddy. That's awesome. So after high school, let me ask you this. In high school, did you play sports?
I did. I played football freshman year and I played golf all 4 years.
Which one was your favorite?
Golf by a mile.
Yeah, by a mile. Yeah. I can only imagine. You grew up you grew up on the course, right?
Grew up in the industry. I got pictures of Pine Valley right behind me. It shows you what kind of impact it had.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So at some point, so you graduate high school, you choose to go to a college. Which college did you go to and why?
I went to Rowan University. I don't know. It just was close. It was easy to commute. I think between working at the golf course, I had another job. I was always an entrepreneur at heart. I never was really one of the guys that was cut out to kind of go move, away and live in college. Although in hindsight, I kind of regret that. But I went to Rowan College, and the irony is I started at Rowan College and I graduated at Rowan University. I flipped over to university. I was the first university graduate there. So it's kind of cool.
That's cool. What'd you major in?
I majored in criminal justice. I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to go work for the FBI, get my law degree and work for the FBI, and that didn't happen. So yeah, that's kind of what I majored in.
What changed?
I interviewed for a job. I was looking for a job as I was trying to get through college, and I actually got hired at Morgan Stanley when I was 22, 23 years old to be a stockbroker. I went through a stockbroker program in New York and got hired, and next thing you know, I started a career on Wall Street. I never thought that was going to happen. It just happened.
So what was it about working at Morgan Stanley that sort of pulled you away from criminal justice?
Well, I think I always kind of really liked business. I always liked the aspects of business, the nuts and bolts of it, and analyzing it and what's right, what's wrong. I was kind of like a product and would the product sell? And at its core, that is what a stock is. Does the company have a product that somebody would buy? And it just kind of pulled me away. I just felt like, I'll be honest, at 22, 23 years old, you're starting to get paychecks in. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go start working working all the way through this. And it's funny, I was still caddying at that point, and I caddied for a couple guys that were in the FBI and that were state troopers at the time. And I'll never forget, I caddied for a gentleman named Jack Smiley, who was an attorney out of Pittsburgh. And he highly recommended I did not go down that road. He was an attorney for years, an older gentleman. He's like, he said, "Where are you at now?" I said, "Morgan Stanley." He goes, "Kid, just stay there." He goes, "Don't go down this road." So whether he was right or wrong, I don't know, but it always stuck with me. And I just never left, I had more after Morgan Stanley, but that was it. I just graduated and I never really gave a second thought to law school.
That's cool. So how long were you with Morgan Stanley?
I was with Morgan Stanley, I think about 2 years, and then I moved over to Credit Suisse First Boston, which is known as the institutional side of Wall Street.
Gotcha.
That's where the more larger volumes of money is whipped around on equity and things like that. So I was dealing with mutual funds, mutual fund managers, which is a vastly larger fish than I was dealing with individuals, which was kind of cool. But that's where I really got to understand business, balance sheets, P&L. I really got to understand, look, it isn't just about, is it a great product or whatever? It's what do the finances look like and so forth. So the education I got from institutional side Wall Street was really something that it was just amazing.
So what made you make the jump from Morgan Stanley to Credit Suisse?
I had a great connection at Pine Valley, and the connection is a true legend on Wall Street who was able to get me an interview. And the only reason I got it is because of the golf course. That's why I'm very thankful. Yeah. It's not like, I was like, it's literally it's who you know, and I do believe that. I was in the right place at the right time, and somebody said, "I think you should go over for this interview." I was not qualified for the interview in any capacity, but I got the job. And I went through the equity training program. There was actually a book written on it years ago called Liar's Poker.
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah.
Okay, so I did the same thing, except this was for Credit Suisse. I think that was Solomon Smith. It might have been Solomon at that time.
I think it was, yeah.
So I went to the equity training program, and everybody's saying all of their names. They went to Duke, Fuqua, Harvard, MIT. They get to me, and at that point, I was like, I didn't go to one of these schools. I'm at Rowan University. So anyway, I got there, but I ended up becoming, friendly. with a lot of people. It was a great experience. It really was. I had a lot of great clients, and I think I was there about 6 years. So I guess
Yeah.
my Wall Street years are about 8 years if I'm doing that right.
So at some point you make a decision to leave Credit Suisse. Why did you leave and where did you go?
My time ran come to an end. The thing on Wall Street is that, the average there's a lifespan on Wall Street. Some people make it a career and it's awesome, but a lot of people it's kind of like a running back career. You have about 3.5 5 years. You
And
really
you did
if you don't
8.
start. I did 8. I think it's 8. I think it was like 6 to 8 right there was
Yeah.
my span, but it was double than normally what a lot of other people did at the time. There were some mergers that were happening. My wife and I just had our first daughter. Our daughter was experiencing some health issues, and I had an opportunity to kind of get bought out per se, which is a fancy term for we're laying off a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
Here's your
the merger
severance package, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
here's your severance package. So that's kind of what happened. So, quite a few of us were moving on. I wasn't arguing it. I had another opportunity to interview with another investment bank via a connection I had. I chose not to. I was in a fortunate enough spot where I could take a step back and say, let me see what I want to do. But the thing that always pulled me was I want to run my own business. I don't want to have to answer to somebody. And if I'm going to get fired, it's going to be me firing me. And that's where I took the route of opening up my own business.
So you open up your own business. Is that Ward Consulting?
No, I opened up. I started an e-com business. So when I was working on Wall Street, I was part of the .com era. So I saw the rise of what was happening, and I saw, look, we got a major opportunity on our hands. So
That was crazy, man.
it was nuts. But the funny part is a lot of times I was in these meetings, and these companies that were talking. I mean, I'm a 26-year-old kid at that point. I'm like, this company's never going to make a dime. Like you could tell that they're never going to make a dime. And how are you going to, even at 26, I'm telling you not to invest here.
Yeah.
But it was literally, I just think it was the casinos. Some companies emerged, Google, Amazon became titans. So some of it was great.
Mhm.
But we had an opportunity to buy a company. It was actually a ticket brokerage company in Philadelphia. And I sat down with an owner. The guy had every primo seat for the Philadelphia sports. And a guy I went to the meeting with, we were talking to each other. And we're like, why wouldn't we just buy the tickets ourselves? Why are we going to give this guy money? So we ended up building an e-com business that was built on high-end luxury tickets, luxury sporting events, Broadway tickets. And we had a full website, which back in 04, 05, doing e-com was very, very, you're talking over 20 years ago now.
That was kind of novel back then. Yeah.
It was, and we were doing it. And I found out that, there was different ways in which to market things, which was kind of beginning to pivot me into another role, was that I realized, okay, people were using Google, they were using eBay, they were back then, they were using things like Craigslist and things like that to come buy tickets. So we started marketing everywhere. That's where I started learning everything about SEO and actually paid ads on Yahoo and so forth. And that's where I was kind of learning digital marketing back in 04, 05. And that's kind of like, that's kind of where it was. And it's segue into my, the next career, which was a digital marketing agency.
Wow, that's awesome. So you sort of were doing the digital marketing thing out of necessity, right?
Yes.
And you were sort of getting your lumps and your bumps and all that kind of stuff out of the way. And then you realize, hey, it's all about marketing. So you go out and start Ward Consulting.
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't even Ward Consulting. So, so the funny part is, what happened was the 08 era happened. Remember, everybody's losing their homes. They couldn't pay their mortgage. So they sure as heck weren't buying $1,000 Wicket tickets, because that's funny because now Wicket's big now. That was our biggest seller back in 05.
Oh, wow.
Funny is that, right?
Wow, that's a long time ago, man.
And that's when it started, 05, 06.
That's amazing.
I never saw the show once. I haven't seen the movie, but our revenue was 10% Wicket tickets every day.
Wow,
that's how big that show was. But so after 08, what happened was things, kind of really went to hell in a handbasket with the economy, as I'm sure you lived through it. We just weren't getting any sales. The business wasn't really a sellable business. There was really, and it got to the point it just ran out of gas. And I had a wife at that point, 2 kids, I had a mortgage, not making the money nearly what I was doing on Wall Street. That was kind of evaporated. Like, I got to survive.
Mhm.
So what we kind of talked about before the call, I actually started doing a couple of things for free for people, saying, look, I can optimize your website. I can do this thing called SEO. And, people didn't even know what it was. They're like, all right, give you a shot. I used to put an ad out. I think it was on Craigslist. I put an ad, I think even in the local paper, like, I'll do certain things for free for you. If it works, then, after a couple of months, pay me. And I wasn't charging anything on that. So, but it started catching velocity. Like I was working in my basement, I'd work on the weekends and I would optimize hundreds of pages on the weekends. And it started catching on and people started, calling me. It got so busy at one point by myself, I had to unplug my basement phone because of the amount of calls coming in. I had to like stop. I'm like, I don't have enough business.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
and the crazy thing is, I always say, that's what happened. I walked in one day and I literally had 25 people at an agency I own. Like that's how rapid and fast. The company was called Rank Me SEO. Then it moved into Comexis, which Comexis is still around now. I am still the president of Comexis. Although I do consulting, Comexis is something that we're still running right now. So it still lives in this iteration, but that's kind of how it got all the way to where it is. So.
Yeah. And nobody back then, well, not nobody, but a lot of people back then didn't know what SEO was.
No, they couldn't. They used to call it SEO,
Yeah.
SEO. That's how they pronounce it. They even had no idea what it was. They didn't even realize the digital marketing game. It was so funny. The amount of people that didn't have websites back then,
Yeah.
it was staggering. But yeah, it was a very, opposed to what's going on now with AI, which we'll talk about later, it was a very slow moving event. It's
Yeah.
much slower than I think people think. It took 20 years to grow the
Yeah.
digital marketing agency world. It really did.
Yeah, it really did. That's true. So so what you're doing when you're in the basement and you're doing the SEO and all that, what's the name of that company? Oh, that's Comexis, right?
No, that was actually, I call it was just what I call it. Oh, Rank Me SEO.
Gotcha. Rank Me SEO. I got you.
And that came, believe it or not, I think it was my wife who came up with the name because people would call me up and the first thing they'd say, they're like, look, I need you to rank me on this SEO thing.
Yeah.
Like, because that's how it was ranking on Google's and, and it was certain things you did to rank certain web pages up. And I think my wife said something. She's like, you should just call yourself Rank Me SEO. And I did.
Yeah.
So that was the company's name. Connexus happened after I had a partner I worked with for years on a lot of different projects. He was a creative individual, developed websites. He was the one that developed a lot of like pharmaceutical packaging. He was one of those guys. So whatever you see like a packaging or like a really cool brochure, that's what he did. We used to work together on a lot of projects and eventually we decided to merge and we changed the name to Comexis, Communication Excellence. So that's kind of how it happened. And that probably happened about, I guess I probably ran Rank Me SEO for about 7 years, 8 years, and then we merged into the current iteration now. Unfortunately, that partner passed away a couple of years ago before, right after COVID, which was sad. But so now Comexis is still here, not the size it was, but that's exactly where I want it to be, a little smaller. And now we're moving all the way into, all right, now the digital marketing world is changing forever. Now here's AI.
Yeah.
So morphing and changing into that.
So I guess so you still have Comexis, but at some point you decide to start Ward Consulting. When did that happen?
Well, Ward Consulting actually happened when there were people because a lot of times there's a term in the digital marketing world called feeding the dragon, which means you have to bring in enough work to feed the staff that you're with.
Right.
Sometimes people didn't want the staff. I might have had an agency or I might have had individuals who just wanted to pick my brain. Or just want to have a conversation with me. I have worked with a couple people who, they're thinking about buying an agency, and they're just my thoughts on that. So I'm like, you know what, let me just do Ward Consulting. And I thought as I'm in my 50s now, at some point, if I decide to leave the digital marketing world, I have the consulting thing. So it's kind of one of those like things I set up for when I'm, decide to leave the industry and say, okay, well, I can still consult and so forth.
So kind of logical next step type thing.
Yeah. As we get to that certain age, where you're like, look, I don't want to, grind 60 hours a week. Let's do 25.
Gotcha. So talk about digital marketing and specifically AI. What are you seeing coming? What's happening right now? And what does tomorrow look like?
So I think digital marketing for the vast majority of people is still the exact same thing. It's search and retrieve. You search for an answer, you retrieve a bunch of blue links, and you look for your results on Google. I still believe that, social media ads and things like that are all working. And people are kind of just going about their everyday business. It's a really bad pun, but there's an iceberg that's probably not even about a mile out. I believe there's 5% of the people that actually see it. These are very smart people, not including myself. I've just latched on them and I'm listening to what they're saying. I think the way we do digital marketing is going to forever change. We're going to move from search and retrieve to solve my problem. And solve my problem means I'm not going to look through 52 links. I'm not going to look through your social media video. I'm going to prompt a question. You're going to give me my answer, and I'm going to build up a bunch of answers, and I'm going to walk into a store or walk into a place and be a very, very highly intelligent buyer, and I'm going to know exactly what I want. So it's a massive shift on how you market that. You're not going to, it's, where marketing is always kind of like a shell game, like, it's like, bait and switch, although I don't want to call it that because that's not it. But that is the crux of what marketing has been for years. This is more, tell me what it is, tell me what the problem is, and you need to back it up with, okay, like why? And that's what AI does. And now I'm going to have all my data, and I'm going to make my decision from there. Now that's kind of where we are, and that's where we're headed right now. A lot of companies, I'm getting all of our clients ready for that. And there's a process that we go through, but where do I see it's going in the future? I actually believe that we're very close to AI agents and via your phone. I know Apple just did their update with Apple Intelligence. You can use Amazon Rufus and so forth. You're going to be interacting with these AI agents that are really going to get to know you in a really big way or a really good way. And those agents are going to interact with other business agents. And that's how business and marketing is going to transact. So it's almost like you're removing the human element. And you're going to go on. I've used this on another show. I said, maybe, look, I'm having brake issues, and I know I need to get a brake job done. And you're going to type that into your assistant. And this is not years away. This is soon. You're going to type it in your system. Your system's going to know the car you have. It's going to know the brakes you need. It's going to know what credit card to put these on because of the miles you're going to get. It's going to then start looking locally for what they believe based upon your calendar, what you're looking to pay. It's going to identify the right shop to go to and say, this is what we're going to do. It's going to book the appointment. And on your phone, you're going to know, bring this in Saturday morning because you don't have anything going on. This is what it's going to cost and so forth. And all the interaction is going to happen between those two agents.
Wow.
So marketing as we know it is going to be blown away. And I don't think any of us have an idea of how that's going to look, but that is the beginning. Breadcrumbs are beginning to follow now on the trail where AI is headed. I'm throwing a lot at you, but that's kind of where I think we are right now.
That's wild. So our whole world is getting ready to change.
Yeah, I don't think people understand the impact that's coming. I really, really don't. It's funny. Sorry about that. I'm like in between.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's my office. The blinds.
You're like dodging. You're like dodging the sun.
Yeah, I'm trying to dodge it.
It's all right.
I don't think people understand. It's funny because I listen to a couple really, really good podcasts on AI, and the one gentleman who I find to be one of the better podcasts out there for AI makes a great comment. I don't think economists, people on Wall Street, business leaders are baking in the human capital problem we're going to be looking at with AI. And the amount of, you don't realize how many people have repetitive jobs and they're paid to do repetitive work. And it's what they like to do, and it's what they get paid to do. That stuff's going to be taken away. There are a lot of industries, namely marketing out of the gate, that's going to be impacted. And I think it's time the conversations, and I think this is going to happen this year, need to get louder and more productive between business owners and their staff, between business owners and their clients and vendors and so forth, and say, what impact is AI going to have on me? Because it's going to be vast, it's going to be dramatic, and it's going to be traumatic. And I think people need to be ready for this.
Can you walk us through why you think it's going to be those things, traumatic, dramatic, that type of thing?
Well, because if you go take a look at it, like one of the case examples I thought was very interesting was, if you go look at things from like a legal perspective, there are a lot of times there are law firms that have junior lawyers working there, or maybe junior accountants. And you can create a custom GPT that on, like, say, ChatGPT, and you can train it on how to understand certain things with the law. You can upload certain documents. These things actually will take the jobs and be able to write legal briefs, work on things that junior accountants, junior lawyers are working on, because quite honestly, they're actually smarter than the juniors. They're actually smarter than the accountants and the lawyers. So once people begin to understand that they can work with a GPT why are they going to pay certain types of law firms? Why are they going to pay certain types of accountants? And I'm not picking on law firms and accountants. I have a lot
No,
of
no,
clients.
it's just, you're just using them as an example. I got you.
As an example, it's the same with marketing. It's why would you pay a digital agency to run your entire campaign when these things, when trained right, can give you a full strategy? We'll write all the blog content, all the social media content, all your email content. We'll create an entire buyer's journey for you. We'll read all your analytics, and we are months away from these things being able to create all the creative video, which is already here, images, which is here. So you got a lot of agencies out there that are just whistling through the graveyard, and they're not prepared for this.
Yeah.
So, and so I could go on, but when you start,
I'd love for you to.
Well, yeah, when you start,
This is a hot topic, man. This is something that you're right. A lot of people are not prepared for this, myself included. Okay. And it's something that that we're hearing about a lot, but it's not something that people are delving into. They're not getting into sort of how this is going to roll, how this is rolling out, and then specifically how it's affecting people, right? Because I mean, I've heard, and I think we all have, we've heard terms like millions of jobs lost because they're replaced by AI. I had a situation the other day where a gentleman approached me because of my background and because of the podcast, approached me and said, "Hey, I want you to write a book." And we had a conversation, and the conversation between he and I was probably one of the coolest conversations I've ever had in my life. And then he said to me, he said, "Listen, we need to put a contract together. We need to get your first book done. I want a manuscript by May." And I came away from that sort of stunned, and I thought, how in the world, with the schedule I have right now, how in the world I'm not going to be able to sleep for the next 4 months, right? And I mentioned it to somebody that I'm very, very close to, and he said, "You know what? You can have AI write it for you. It can be done in way less than 4 months." And it all of a sudden, exactly, that was the look I had too. All of a sudden I'm going, what? Well, it's not, I don't use Chat GPT, just for the record. I haven't used AI that I know of necessarily, right? I mean, I've used it with Gmail and that kind of thing, right? But not the way you're talking about in terms of an overt fashion. So do you mind digging into this a little bit with us?
Yeah, so I can tell you right now, I would just take all of your podcasts. We would run them through a GPT or a custom chatbot, which I'll talk about that in a second. And I would say, read this YouTube channel, break down transcripts, and now create a manuscript for me based upon all the stories you talked to. Done. It'd be done in an hour.
That'd be a thick book. Your episode number 267.
Yeah, I mean, and then you could kind of go through it. Say, give me a chapter. At least the great way to go about it would be give me an outline. And it would give you say, okay, give me an outline. Identify the ones with the top viewers. Identify the ones with the most clicks or whatever. Or the one that I kept going back to and looking at, whatever it may be. You could set parameters, and it would pull that in. There are custom GPTs. I'm sure there's a GPT store you can go to that can write a manuscript based upon all the podcasts that have been created.
Yeah, and
you're going to see that. So that right there, you got to think about the people that are going to be impacted, maybe who are writers, they're ghostwriters. Now, I do believe this when it comes to AI. I do believe the great writers, the great artistic directors, I do believe the great creative minds are going to get greater.
Yeah.
I believe if you're okay, if you're average, I do believe that you should start thinking about something different or embrace AI and see if you can become one of the great ones. Because as great as AI is, and as great as the results that are coming back, for now, we'll just say ChatGPT because that's what everybody knows. As the greatest ChatGPT information that comes back to us is tremendous. It still takes that human initial touch to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. Now, the scary part about that is some people believe these new reasoning models, and I believe ChatGPT just released 04, the reasoning models. That's where things are getting a little concerning because it can reason. It can start thinking of a concept. It can start thinking of an idea. And I don't know enough about these new reasoning models. I haven't played around with them enough to think, is that where they are? But I know that is where they want to go.
So it starts drawing its own conclusion. Is that what you're saying?
to its own conclusions. It's going to start thinking about what it would be. It's going to start actually thinking, rather than saying, you asked me a question and I have a problem, it's going to go back and say, this is your definitive answer because I have all this information behind me telling me this is right. It's going to come in and you're going to say, I'm thinking about an idea for a book, and then it's going to start interacting with you. And it's going to start saying, let's talk about that.
Can I ask you something about this? And I'm just purely curious.
Sure.
There are these interactive, and it's probably old technology, in your world, but these interactive assistants, right? That you can talk to and you can ask them a question and they'll answer the question. And one of the things that we discovered a few months ago was we asked a question of an automated assistant that they answered the question about one particular person differently than they did a different person. And it basically told us that they had a sort of a predetermined opinion of one person versus the other one. Is that what you're talking about in terms of that reasoning that's going on?
No, I think the reasoning, and again, I don't know enough about the reasoning models to get too elaborate on it, because somebody may watch this podcast and say he's totally wrong. The reasoning is more interpreting all the data, looking at the data, and then coming back to you with an answer where they think this is the answer you may be looking for, and they think this is the right answer. I think the step that these reasoning things, the bridge it gets over is asking you a question.
Right.
That's when things are going to be blown to bits.
Gotcha.
So come in and say, I'm really looking to get an answer. We're trying to build a house or whatever, and we're having like certain issues on how we can construct this and so forth. This is my problem. Normally we just shoot you back an answer. But the next step will be, okay, well, let's talk about what you're looking to do. So once it asks you the question back, now we're at a stage of, whoa. So this thing is now working with me, and this thing is vastly more intelligent than me. So I think the reasoning model more is, how can it interact with you? How can it give you a more logical answer, opposed to this is your answer and that's just it, opposed to saying this is most likely the answer because this is what.
Yeah.
So that kind of that human element.
I got you. Okay. So a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
If somebody owns a company and they're looking to market that company, but they don't necessarily know if they need to be digitally marketing it or marketing it in a regular way. They're really not sure where to go. They just know they need marketing. They need advice. How can they reach out to you, and how can you help them with Ward Consulting?
Well, actually, the quickest way, if I'm going to do that, I have to go to complexities.com. I think Complexities would be the quickest way for myself and my team to work with them on marketing.
Okay.
If they're looking just to have a conversation about marketing and they really don't know where they want to go, I'm always available for consulting on a block of hours and so forth, and that would be Ward Consulting.
I got you. Okay. So complexities.com.
Mm-hmm.
So spell Commexis for me.
COMMEXIS.com.
Okay. So COMM like com, right? Yep. And then EXIS?
Yep. .com.
.com. Okay, cool. All right. So we'll put a link to that in your description on the website or the episode description. So what do you think tomorrow looks like for both digital marketing and also traditional marketing? What are you seeing on the horizon? Obviously AI, right? But what else are you seeing out there?
I think traditional marketing is going to have more, believe it or not. I think you're going to see a rise of traditional marketing coming back a little bit. I believe the billboards, certain types of print, based upon where it's at, I think you're going to see a bit of a resurgence of that. And the reason I'm at that is because the one thing that I am steadfast on and I am adamant about is that we are in the end of days of digital marketing. Yeah. The days of SEO, the days of Google search, we are in the utter end of days. We are no longer going to keep going higher and higher. If anything, it's plateaued and it's going to start pulling back. You will start seeing Google probably report really good earnings numbers. And the earnings numbers are because what's happening is less and less people are going 3-4 pages deep to find a solution. And more people, once they realize that SEO, the organic stuff's not working, they start pushing all their money to the paid. That is Google's majority of their business model is that. So you're
talking about pay-per-click?
Pay-per-click.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure we were clear. Yeah.
So people are going to think Google's doing great, and Google's still a great company, still one of the leaders of AI. It's not even close. But if you're a company and if you are solely dependent on search engine optimization, you had better get a plan together, because that is only going to get worse going forward. Your first thing that's going to happen, maybe you might be a company, and maybe you own a clothing store and you've been adamant about not, or whatever it may be, adamant about not doing pay-per-click. You're going to find yourself now doing pay-per-click because you're getting less traffic that way.
Right.
Now, the next step after that, by the end of this year, you're going to find yourself not even getting the traffic from pay-per-click because the amount of competition is getting so expensive. And then you're getting concerned. And then you're going to start hearing what everybody's talking about. More and more people are using ChatGPT. More and more people are using a platform called Perplexity, which is something I recommend people use. That's the future of search engines. And less people are using Google. I think Google's rollout of AI, which is called Gemini, has been very clunky. I think it's been clunky because they know that their business model is completely, under threat.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll figure it out, but I do believe digital marketing in the next 3 years, you're going to be talking about advertising via ChatGPT way more than you are Google. I do believe in the next 3 years. That is the future. It's where we are. So if you're not making a plan about this, getting away from search and retrieve, remember, search all the blue links to solve my problem, fire your CMO immediately, because it's time to really move into this world. At the bare minimum, get 15 to 20% of your marketing investment into the AI world, even just to learn it. Your ROI is not going to be there out of the gate, but it will be there. Your ROI will be there when you say to yourself, our company survived, we're here. And the last thing I'll say, without getting too long-winded, we talked earlier when I said about how slow digital marketing grew. It took 20 years to grow, and it took time. So OpenAI is now 200 million users, if I'm correct. It took them about 20 months to get there. Facebook, to get to 200 million users, took 6 years. So the speed at which this is moving is unlike anything you've ever seen. This isn't something you're going to be punting out. If you're not engaged in AI by the end of 2025, you got a problem on your hands.
Yeah, it's blinding. So let's say somebody owns a company and they are considering firing their CMO. Let's just put it that way, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean to be mean.
What's that?
I didn't mean to be mean, but I'm just
no. I got you. I appreciate it, man. We're looking for unvarnished advice here, right? Yeah. And you're the guy to deliver it. So that's exactly. I mean, that's all you're doing is making a case for people hiring you as a consultant and going to complexities.com to figure out where they need to go next, right? So, and the reason I'm asking this is, I don't know if you've read this book, and if you haven't, I recommend it. It's called Never Enough, and it was written by Andrew Wilkinson. Do you know who that is?
No, I know the name, but I never heard the book. No.
So Andrew wrote a book earlier this year, and I didn't read it. I listened to it. I listen to audiobooks while I'm working out and that kind of thing. But I highly recommend it. And it's called Never Enough, and it's Barista to Billionaire. Okay. And in his 30s, Andrew became a billionaire. And he talks about his story. He talks about how he got there and that kind of thing, right? And one of the things that he and his partner did was they adapted, if you will, the Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger model of buying companies and then turning those companies and making them into something worth much, much more. They did it with marketing. That's why I think it'd be a great idea for you to read this book. They did it with marketing, and it changed fundamentally the way that I looked at marketing. And I'll give you an example. They bought a company from a founder who literally had patents on the device that he produced, and they bought it from him. He was 85 years old, and it made espressos. It was an espresso machine, right? They went in and they sat with him, and he said, "Listen, they're in his office, in his conference room. And they said, what's it going to take for us to buy your company?" And he said, "I'm going to give you a number, but you're not going to be willing to pay it. And it's going to be more than you're going to want to pay. But I'm just going to give you a number because I'm 85 years old and my wife's been after me to retire and all this," right? He said 70 million. And they said, done and done. They bought it for 70 million. What's interesting is they applied marketing to this company that this founder, who had a whole different outlook on things, was not applying, and it was worth 4 times that number in 6 months. Okay. Marketing is a big, big, big deal, and it's fundamentally changing as you're saying, it's fundamentally changing right now. So there are people who own companies that they feel like the sand is washing out from underneath their feet, right? What advice would you give these people that own these companies that feel like they're behind the curve on AI, right? And they really need to start marketing and catching up?
The best advice I can give is advice I do give to business owners, clients when I talk to them. Identify an individual that you trust at your company. Maybe even it's you. Maybe it's your right-hand person, and make them spearhead the AI effort at the company right now. Their job, their sole job, is once a week to sit in your office and say, "This is everything I've learned about AI so far, and this is how it's going to impact our business." Their job is to listen to podcasts, is to read books, is to get on X and develop an AI list. You can do that very easily, and keep listening, learning, and then have that exact same individual allow them to purchase a pro plan of ChatGPT, allow them to, anything that's payable, like a pro plan of Perplexity, and let them work on it. Personally, I think the business owner should do this. That would be my I think this is such a seismic shift that if you don't understand AI, you most likely are not going to be able to make intelligent decisions on where your marketing investment or business process investment should be going. So it should be you. But if you are not spearheading and learning every single thing you can, do it starting today. So, and then once you do that, you will now find yourself in the minority, which is great, because the majority of people are not there. One of the best things I've heard to kind of drive that point home was they said, I think it was by the end of 2026, the first $1 billion a year company or net worth company that's going to be worth $1 billion by the end of 2026 is going to be here. And that company is going to have less than 5 employees, and they're all going to be running on AI. So let that sink in for a minute. So the first
5 employees,
5 employees, all AI, and you're going to start seeing this everywhere. So companies are with AI, if you build it right. Like right now, my agency is about 6 people, 5 to 6 people. We have some partners you work with as well. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. I have no question I can compete with an agency of 250 people right here, right now, based upon on the AI models I would build, and it's not even close. Because the 250 people working in your agency, 150 of them are copywriters, is my guess. So we'll blow them out right away, as long as I have a couple good editors looking at stuff. So once you put that in a business owner's mind and they're like, wait a minute, the first $1 billion a year company or a company with a net worth of $1 billion is going to have 5 employees. How's that possible? Once you start digging into AI and toying around with it and playing around with it, you'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh my God, I get it now. That's the best advice I could give somebody right now.
So you got to get in this thing. You got to dive in, right? Not put your toe in the water. You got to just dive in and get after it.
No, I think you're going to start. And I know this sounds crazy. It's funny because anybody that's talking AI right now, whenever I have this conversation, we all say we sound like a lunatic. We know this. But at my stage of my career, 52 years old, I'm just going to say it. I don't care anymore. So, I do believe companies will go out of business in the next 3 years. Just the ones that did not embrace AI, they're going to get beat so quick to the punch by their competitors. And we actually wrote a blog on this. The best part about it is that your competitors aren't the ones you've been competing with for years. Your competitors is Jenny, who's working in her basement, who's becoming a master at AI. She's the one who's going to come for you, and she's going to take your lunch in a year or less if you don't understand what AI is. It's time.
Wow. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. And by the way, you've earned the right. Okay. You're 52 years old. You've done this a long time. You've earned the right to be blunt with people. And I appreciate you being blunt with people here, because that's really where change happens, right? People need to listen to what you're saying so that they can figure out what their next move is.
Yeah, agree. Thank you.
So complexities.com, if they are looking for marketing and they're looking for advice and that kind of thing, right? And then if somebody goes to complexities.com and then for some reason they need consulting, you'll just basically take them and run with it with Ward Consulting.
Yeah, anybody that reaches out to Comex always goes to me. So I get all the form fills, and anytime there's a phone call, you're dealing directly with me. So
gotcha. Okay. So one last question.
Sure.
What's the single greatest piece of wisdom that you've learned over all these 26 years that you've been doing this?
I say it every time. I was fortunate enough to caddy for Charles Barkley.
Ooh, I love him.
Yeah, he's great. Being a Philadelphia fan, Eagles this weekend. I was lucky enough to caddy for a lot of famous people and a lot of sports people, but Barkley was different because Barkley was a 76er. And I was in college, this was right after he was traded to Phoenix, I think.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to caddy for him, and he was as great of a person as you would think on TV. Charles Barkley is one of the nicest people you ever meet in your life. Yeah. We got to the 18th hole. He was great the whole time around. He was horrible. He's a much better golfer now, but I'll never forget when he teed off. I was like, Charles, is this happening all day? He's like, just carry the bag. I'm like, it's bad. It's like, this is bad. So
did you help him with that glitch?
No,
help him with that?
No, it was the worst swing I've ever seen. I'm like, good God, Charles, what is that? How are you that kind of basketball player with that? But so we got to the 18th hole, and I said, Charles, I'm like, I'm going to ask you something as a fan. I'm like, I just have a question. I said, I ain't got much time left with you. I said, what made you great? And I was like, because I was like, you have to understand. I'm like, I know your fallout in Philly was ugly with the media and all that. I said, you understand the fans loved you. I was like, so what made you so great? He goes, Lenny, that's a great question. He goes, let me tell you something. He goes, let me tell you what made me great. And he was very humble about saying that. He goes, and I'll tell you what made Michael great. Michael Jordan at that time was one of his good buddies. Yeah. He goes, Lenny, indecision will kill you. He goes, indecision about a shot, indecision about whether you're going to make a move on a court. He goes, in business and in life. He goes, I made a decision. He goes, and I never thought twice about it. He goes, Michael was the same way. And he was going through all the basketball greats. He goes, and whenever you talk to all the basketball greats, he's like, that's one of the very first things they'll tell you. Indecision will kill you. He goes, that was it. So I took that with me for the rest of my life. Yeah. And I tried to, Anthony Robbins is a big make fast decisions muscle memory. And it's funny when you stack that with what Charles Barkley said, who had such a successful career and still is. I believe that's the best piece of advice I can tell anybody, whether you're right or wrong, whether you're going to make a mistake or not in your career, make the decision, stick with it. And it's either it moves you forward or it moves you even further forward because it was a great learning lesson. So that's the best piece of advice I ever heard.
I think that's the best advice you could possibly give somebody. That's awesome. And, Tony has a favorite saying. I'm a huge fan, obviously. He certified me in sales mastery 35 years ago.
Oh, great. Cool.
And Tony has a favorite phrase, and it's that when you win, you party. Mm-hmm. When you succeed, you party. When you lose, you ponder. Right? You're going to lose more. You're going to learn more from losing than you ever will from winning.
Yeah, that's true. He's
just
great.
Awesome, man. Great. Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been amazing, and I've learned so much. My head hurts. This is incredible, man.
Great. Appreciate
Len Ward, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. We'll see you.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out Calendly.com/Rio760.